Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend so far. Today we're going to be diving into our daily cryptocurrency market update, and we're going to keep this one just a short and sweet one, as it is indeed Saturday, but we're going to fly through a number of really interesting information points. We're going to be looking at the Bitcoin chart, a bit of a critical level that Bitcoin is currently at the moment, and we're going to show you that by dropping down the time frames, probably the daily, and we may take a look at the 4 hourly, see if there's any kind of a structure there that may confirm our kind of caution at the moment. The weekend is typically very treacherous for the cryptocurrency market, certainly Sunday, as it is an easily moved market on a Sunday given the kind of liquidity that sloshes around in the volume. We're going to be going over a number of news related articles, also talking again about regulation, talking about DeFi, talking about the fact that we continue to see the Bitcoin supply get gobbled up. And people just, this, when I say this, people often think that this is disingenuous, that the supply continues to get taken off the table, certainly taken off exchanges. And we know that if we look at the issuance rate for Bitcoin, more people buy Bitcoin. I think it's 2 or 3 companies buy basically the entire daily supply that comes into the market through mining for Bitcoin alone. And we know that there's continuous buying of Bitcoin going on and hodling and supply getting taken off the table. The issue that you've got is the supply on the table on the exchanges is more at the moment to the downside than the upside. And we'll talk about that as well. Also, I want to mention DeFi. During this time period, I am going to be absolutely loading up on DeFi protocols. DeFi is the future, ladies and gentlemen, the future of finance, in my opinion. And of course, it's a technology. When I look at the crypto space, there's a few things that there's a lot of areas that I think are undervalued, but one of the main areas is the DeFi space, and we'll talk about all that. And then we'll look at a number of other data points. So let's get into the video, guys. The overall market is somewhat lackluster, not really doing a lot. Bitcoin's at this really critical level currently. I'll show you that by dropping down the time frames. We'll go to the daily. We'll put the eye back on, and you can see, we did say that this was going to be a level of support, or certainly what we was hoping to see as support after we came back into this ascending triangle. And you are consolidating around it. Now, the big question is, do we see another upward stab, or do we see further downside continuation? One thing that I look at, I usually, when you're coming up with a bias, you want to start on the larger time frames and work your way down. I am more biased towards the downside risk at the moment, just simply because of everything going on, and I don't think it really is the fertile ground for, the market to start running to the upside. I think we are going to do that, but I think potentially, given the correlation that we've seen with the equity market, there may be a little bit more downside to come before we get that continuation. And that's something that, in actual fact, I'm actually quite welcoming of, which sounds rather strange. And the reason being is because I'm looking to accumulate as much crypto as I can, as cheaply as possible, before this industry really takes off. This industry has not taken off yet, guys. We don't even have regulatory clarity for it, which is coming. We know that that's set on the agenda for this year, and I think that that is going to really excel the next level of adoption. But when I look at these candles, if you look at the wicks over here, you can see that they're mostly to the upside. If you come over and look over here, they're more to the downside than the up. You've got a lot of hammering wicks. Markets are very good at kind of pointing you in the direction that they want to go. And given the sort of weakness that we're seeing at the moment, I'm certainly going to be watching tomorrow and Monday for a potential spill to the downside. Now, what am I going to be looking at if we do get that spill? And we'll drop down to the smaller time frames in just a second. I'm going to be looking at these kind of levels here. I'm going to be looking at previous levels that we've held as support as potential support. So I do think potentially you could be coming down into your sort of 30K range, and potentially even lower if we start to fail some of these levels. But it is certainly going to be, you're at a very crucial point right now with where you're currently sat at, and you can see just how many times it's played out in the prior chart. Let's drop down to the time frames. Well, let's drop down the time frame, see if there's anything that we can see down here. You do not the best structure that you're sort of forming on the short term. Certainly where you're forming it around this kind of trend line or support trend line, you can see that you're potentially forming some kind of a maybe a head and shoulders that you could see break to the downside, but that wouldn't be catastrophic. I mean, that would probably take you down to your sort of 37k range. If you find support there, you know, you could have a reverse of what sort of happened here, where you maybe pop out to the downside and then get that continuation. And like I say, markets, and we've been explaining this time and time again, at the moment are really driven by the macro backdrop. And really at the moment, more than anything, speculation on interest rate hikes and you know, what they are or are not going to look like. We know that the markets roughly have priced in around about 1.7% interest rate hikes. That's what markets are looking at, and that's what they've kind of priced in, and your institutions have taken off accordingly for the NASDAQ and Bitcoin. It's why Bitcoin's moved like the NASDAQ, is because we have the same players involved. Any kind of a sharp increase of that, I think, would be catastrophic for markets across the board. The real question is, how far do they get before they break something? But we're going to be covering all that. We've got a really, really great video coming out for you tomorrow, guys, talking about reset and talking about, you know, lots of what we're saying does seem quite pessimistic on the crypto space, but the cryptocurrency space is the future of finance, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I think it's potentially the future of money as we know it. Blockchain technology is probably going to be, in my opinion, the technology that we see a future money system ran on. And in fact, your governments around the world are already building that in the form of CBDCs. Regulations set the table for more talent, capital, and building in the crypto industry. Absolutely. Many institutions and companies out there will not touch the crypto space due to its unregulated status. They do not want the risk of the SEC coming after them. It's an absolute headache. But when we get this regulatory clarity, which is coming, we already have the executive order in place. You know, we heard Janet Yellen the other day on my channel talking about Bitcoin. It was very surreal to see Janet Yellen explaining Bitcoin to people. That just, you know, very surreal for me to see that. Certainly given that this was, it still is an industry met with a lot of skepticism, but all emerging technologies are. We showed you this the other day. Crypto bosses say the tide is turning on regulations. And this was, of course, CZ talking about it. Also, the US and Britain both announced moves to bring regulatory oversight to the sort of thriving crypto market. And governments want to foster innovation. Absolutely. This is an interesting chart talking about how we're actually seeing supply get taken off of exchanges. This is something that's been falling for a long time. You know, exchanges seem to have less and less readily available Bitcoin. This is good in a couple of senses. Hodlers don't really affect the price until the demand goes through the roof. That demand currently isn't there, but there is definitely a potential in the future supply shock coming for Bitcoin and a lot of other cryptos out there. But it's all dependent on the demand. The demand right there doesn't really, it's not enough to cause that supply shock. So hodlers don't really affect the price day to day. They have already affected the price when they bought in. But what they can do is, you know, if you have more supply being held than is out there, and you see a huge influx of individuals trying to buy Bitcoin, you can get to a point where, you know, there just isn't any more Bitcoin to sell, or the Bitcoin to sell is at a very low rate, and it causes premiums, which is something that I'm certainly looking out for into the future. Like I say, to reiterate, I believe crypto is the future. Blockchain really is going to be a technology that gets adopted like any other technology. The telephone industry, the motoring industry, the PC industry, the internet, as a sort of technology that gets adopted. That's the path that I think we're on. And I think, you know, right now we're just moving really off of speculation and macro markets, but the fundamentals for the cryptocurrency space will shine through eventually. This tech ain't going anywhere, guys. IMF, International Money Fund, DeFi is at the frontier of financial technology. It is indeed, and it's not even seen any kind of appreciation yet. I've been in Chainlink I think I got into Chainlink in 2018, I want to say, and was when I started picking up my first link, sub $1. And I still hold all of it today. And yes, I could have sold, and probably should have sold at $50. But, you know, I think Chainlink, if you understand what Link and many of these other DeFi protocols are going to do, certainly Link, which is a crucial part of the DeFi space, it's extremely undervalued in my opinion here, given its future perspective, and DeFi is a real sector that I'm looking at. Certainly if we do get any sort of a larger dip for Bitcoin, you know, sort of come back to the low 30s sort of 20k range or high 20k range. I don't think we'll probably, I'm not 100% sure we get down to the sort of 20k range. I could potentially see a retest of this, or certainly coming down to your sort of mid to low 30s. That's when I'd be absolutely aping in and deploying all the stable coins that I currently have sat back into the crypto space, and mainly your sort of DeFi sector is really where I'm targeting things. So that is largely all I have for you. This is another interesting chart from the root, the rational root, talking about, you know, there is a potential for downside like we have seen, but these, you know, the reason you want to talk about this, you don't just want to bury your head in the sands when things aren't hunky-dory. You want to really look for entry points. You know, you can look at this two ways, what's currently happening with the crypto space. You can get all pessimistic about it. We tried to put things into perspective, looking at Bitcoin down here. I mean, the dollar's at the same sort of strength, was at the same strength down here as it is up here, yet Bitcoin's 4 times the price or significantly more than that. You know, Bitcoin has done just fine, guys, and is going to continue to do so. And right now, really, I'm looking for good entry points. I really want to, you know, I'm going to try, my aim has always been to accumulate as much crypto as possible for the future that we're moving towards. So that is really all I have for you in this video, guys. If you've enjoyed this content, a like is always appreciated, so is a comment. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next YouTube video. Have an amazing weekend, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next one.